Okay, teaching online through podcasting. I started my first podcast in May of 2019. I don't know. I just thought there's in millennia as academics, we rely so heavily on journal publishing. And I've been at the university, William Patterson University, for over 20 years, and it's publish or perish, but there are new ways to publish. And podcasting is one of those ways. And I think it's tailor-made for people who, like me, don't enjoy academic writing at all. But you still want to do the research and you still want to report the research and share it with other people. And it's wonderful also because you can either have it public or private. So I have a public podcast that is kind of international at this point. It's really great. I'll show you the analytics. And I have private one for my students at the university that because it's private, I can't show you that one, but I will be showing you my podcast and how I use it for my classes. This was the abstract that I put in your program. It's this is the age of social media, and every faculty meeting that I attend, we wring our hands over why don't they open their email? Why don't they? They don't read all of our email. They don't read the syllabus, and I mean it's actually true. When I first heard people complaining that students don't read the syllabus, I actually gave a quiz, a pop quiz. I didn't count it, but on the syllabus, just to see if anybody had really read it, and no one had. So I'm always looking for ways to modernize the academic experience, and at the risk of watering it down, but I think we can drive our cars alongside the current popular culture a little bit at the university and keep our students, because enrollment is a problem also. And that has something to do with it, that why would you sit in a classroom and listen to a professor for 2 hours, 2.5 hours, when you can stream him or her, or and we lose students to the online universities. That is why I decided to do this. It was a really good decision on my part. The history of podcasting. What is a podcast? A podcast is it's like an online radio station. Okay, it's free. So unlike satellite radio that we have over here, Sirius XM, we have, unlike Apple, Apple Music, unlike some of the other platforms, you don't have to pay to listen. So you can listen to it for free as long as you have a phone. And that's really, really wonderful. The first podcast was created in 2004. And that was by a guy who was he was working for MTV, and he had a show called Music Coffee Notes, and it was streaming from the MTV website. And so there was a guy working with him, and he he on the next day used the platform, that streaming platform, to create his own talk show, and audio talk show, and that was called The Daily Source Code. And the guy Dave Weiner, who created that platform in 2004, is credited with being the founder of the whole platform, the podcast platform. Okay, the word podcasting was coined in February by Ben Hammersley in The Guardian. That's what, because they had already started broadcasting. And of course, when anything is broadcasted publicly, somebody's going to review it. And he reviewed it by calling it podcasting. So Liberated Syndication was the first podcast platform organized public. All right, so it was a standalone platform, and you could use Libsyn without having to have the MTV platform up or anything like that. So that was the first podcasting platform. It is still in existence, and it is not free. Okay, Apple iTunes began when the iPod was out. The iPod, you could listen to music. I'm sure most of you had one at that time if you're old enough. And they opened it up for podcasting. at the end of the year in 2004, in beginning 2005, for podcasting, so that you could listen to these podcasts in your headphones in your ear. And a legend kind of became reality, because oh, by the way, Dave Weiner created the RSS. Whenever you see RSS, it stands for really simple syndication. And that's what the RSS is. It's not anything scientific at all. Just a couple of guys at MTV. Why? Why should I podcast? Why should anybody podcast? If you're in academia, what do you need that for? Isn't that a waste of our time? Isn't that dumbing down the material? I say no, because it is, if you're still kind of teaching the same way that you did 20 years ago, your teaching should be reevaluated, because so much has rapidly changed. I mean, exponentially, the ways that we do things. You'd be hard pressed to find a blackboard in many of the universities that we are now. There's just so many things. When I first started teaching at the university, we had chalk and, oh boy, the overhead projector with the transparencies. Look at how much has changed since then. So, I mean, great teachers are eternal students. We have to figure out how to get ahead of what's happening so that students can look to us, because we're preparing them for not the world we lived in, but the world they are going to live in. It's a really fast moving medium. AC Nielsen Global Media is a company that measures our media consumption internationally. And as you can see on that chart, that's not my chart, they created that one, but it shows you the growth rate of podcasting, the podcast audience, the people listen to podcasts. And it's great. It's for you, it's cost effective, because your university might already have a streaming platform that you can just jump on. You just have to ask. I found that universities, and my own included, of course, have a lot of resources that we just don't tap into because we're not used to doing things differently. And so ask about that. It's an option. And if you wonder, you're dying to pay, you can, it's like monthly. It's for example, Libsyn, Libsyn from the previous slide, is $5 per month. And some of them are even more expensive, but for what you pay, you get a lot of exposure. They will advertise your podcast on other podcasts, on their website, they'll advertise you. It gives you a lot more visibility, but you're going to pay for it. And I don't think that would be something for a person who was a professor just trying to get some information out. I think that's more of a celebrity situation. And in that case, it would be worth it. It's available all over the world. All right, so you're not just teaching to the 50 people in your classroom. You're teaching the information that you're sharing with everyone if you choose to, if it's not private. And you don't have to, it's not live, which I like, because you can listen to it afterwards and edit. Don't you wish you could do that in the classroom sometimes? You can listen to what you said, you can make adjustments, you can trim, cut, paste, etc. I am currently teaching online because my university is closed because of the coronavirus. Everybody is teaching online. This medium is invaluable, because I don't always want to post PowerPoint slides. And my PowerPoint slides are not word for word. I post an outline. So what you're looking at right now is a PowerPoint. Okay, so the availability is, again, quite ubiquitous, because the radio, obviously, if you have an old school radio, you might have access to the podcast. I can't guarantee that. But if you have a computer or a laptop, you've got access for free. You can just stream it right there from your computer, on your phone, which is wonderful. I have a long commute to work when I'm there. And the podcasts keep me company. And there's literally maybe even thousands of podcasts to choose from that you can learn something. The iPod, if you still have one, you should probably keep it or sell it on Craigslist. And because it's valuable now, the iPad or your tablet. So there's lots of options. So I love it because before the coronavirus, I was able to say, listen, this lecture is going to be on episode whatever of my podcast. So you can put your pencil down, you can close your computer and listen to me. Because the more we learn about learning disabilities, the more we understand that some people can't write and listen at the same time. Some people can't type and listen at the same time. Note-taking is facilitated by podcasting. And I love that. So that's great. And then they can also, I think I'm probably getting ahead of myself, but you can upload your podcast, and then your students driving home or riding the bus or whatever, however they get back and forth, they can listen to you on their way home, or they can listen to you as they come to class. So if they didn't do the reading, they can listen to your lecture again and at least be on point, which is nice. They're taking you with them. In today's current classroom teaching format, that's not an option. So, and it's a nice change from posting emailed assignments, and oh boy, COVID-19 has changed everything. I am in New Jersey, and all schools in the state of New Jersey are closed right now. So not only are professors teaching online, but so are K-12 teachers. They're teaching online. I am a mother of 3 children, and my husband and I are home all day with them, and they are receiving information online from their teachers, and my hat is off to them. But podcasting is an option. One of my children's teachers has a podcast, and she's using it for teaching. This is the way to go. Okay. I just thought these statistics were kind of, well, it blew my mind anyway. South Korea leads the world in podcast listeners. I thought that was amazing. I had no idea it would turn out that way. But yeah, according to Statista, one of my new favorite websites for statistics, yeah, it's a real big deal. And as you can see, they're followed by Spain, Sweden, Australia, and us. And those statistics were compiled. They became available in the beginning of February of this year. I get the pop-ups. I love this website. I highly recommend Statista. Great website. The listener demographics. Okay, let me explain this slide. Most people who listen to podcasts are male, who voluntarily listen to podcasts are male. But now the household income, that doesn't mean that they're male. The household income of the average person who voluntarily turns a podcast on is $75,000 a year, US dollars, which again is interesting in and of itself. Most people who listen to podcasts have at least one social media account, which I guess that's an indication of computer literacy. Nielsen also had some data about the educational attainment of people who listen to podcasts. And most of the people who listen to podcasts have graduated from secondary school and or college. So you don't get as many listeners who have not finished school, which is interesting. It says a whole lot about computer literacy, etc. And the average podcast listener is between the ages of 35 and 54. Hey! And this is the Edison Research and Triton Digital. That source is a research organization that pretty much collects nothing but data about podcasts. It's really cool. It's not free though. So ask your university if they'll let you see that, but it's really massive. And for a small fee, you can download their PDF and they'll show you exactly who's listening and when and what they might be listening to and the most popular genres. It's really very comprehensive. Why? Why do this? It facilitates note-taking, because if your students know that they're going to be able to listen to you later on, and they'll be able to hear it over again, they can just take notes and relax and enjoy the class. And it eliminates the need for illegal recorders, people who record you over their phone without your permission. That used to be a big deal. In some places it still is. And so that it preserves your body of work, really. Because one day you'll have this big batch of podcasts that you can use, that you've covered every subject or every piece of the curriculum, and you'll have it all available. And who knows, you might decide to transcribe them and publish them as in a journal or something, or a book even. But you'll have this big body of oral work. Lecture encourages note-taking. PowerPoint encourages copying, or they just take out their phone and take a picture of your slides. But podcasting encourages listening. And they don't have to choose. Podcasting is sustainable. We waste so much energy around the world with our light and heating sources, especially if we're still relying upon fossil fuels. You have to keep the lights on, you have to have the heat on or the air conditioning on, you need paper, you need desks, etc. So a lot of industry is involved in having students in the classroom, and you're active teaching, right? Because again, you're on the computer, that means Wi-Fi. And so it's more sustainable. It's online, it's oral, and it's free. Okay, it's accessible, the free platform for academic use. If you're using, those of you who teach online or use online tools, it's available on Blackboard, but it's embedded, it's part of the Collaborate extension. And Canvas, I think it's called. A friend of mine who teaches at another university uses that, and you can stream through that as well. So it's not live, but you can speak and record and develop a database of podcast episodes. You can have a private podcast, as you would probably with your classes. If you're interacting directly with students in your podcast, if you're saying their names, if you're saying specific things about certain groups, if you have a group activity going on and you just want to say to everyone, hey, group A, I'd like you to do this, group B. It's one thing to type it and upload it and say, okay, I sent you your instructions, but it's a nice bonus that if they can just log in and say, okay, what am I supposed to do? And they can hear it and hear it over and over and over again. This speaks to people with dyslexia who have difficulty reading and would benefit from this. The sight impaired and blind would also benefit from this. So the more distance learning people do, the more options we need to offer, or else we become irrelevant. Podcast episodes can even be used as assessments. Yes, as a quiz. Sometimes right in the beginning of class, I like to give a 3-question quiz to see if they did the reading. This kind of eliminates that as well, because if you're teaching online, you can't have that because they're not coming into the classroom, but you can post an episode in which you ask 3 questions. You know what I mean? And they have to respond to it. So I mean, there's lots of ways. If you're creative, there's lots of ways that this can be used to your advantage. Lots of ways. So this is by no means a complete list, okay? But it is a sample of some of the platforms that are available. What do I mean by platform? You can log on to the website, create an account for yourself, and you can record through that website, and you have your own material up into the and into the cloud or whatever. But these are all platforms. Apple Podcasts will let you upload and record, but it's not free. I'm using Anchor.fm. It's in the middle column. These are in no real order. I apologize. Anchor.fm. I chose Anchor because I'm a cheapskate. It's free and it's very accessible. It didn't try to throw a whole bunch of code at me. It was just really, really, for a middle-aged woman, it was just perfect. Okay, so type your name here with the arrow. It was great. It just made it so easy for me. And I knew before I got started, I knew what I wanted to do. I've been teaching pre-service teachers for the past few years, and I'm also a supervisor of student teachers. And it has been my observation over the years that when it's time for them to actually find a job or look for a job, they really didn't know how to present themselves. They had all this information that we had poured into their head in college, and they had the experience of student teaching, which is a wonderful experience. But what they didn't have were the skills and agency to put their resume out there, their curriculum vitae, and show what they can do and speak for themselves in a way that is credible. So I created a podcast called Starting Your Teaching Career. And I created it for, I teach the seminar, the student teaching seminar and the Critical Practice 1 seminar. So that's the class that they take every week. Up until recently, we would meet every week and talk about their field experience, what they did in the classroom, what worked, what didn't work, how can I prepare for the future, etc. So I created this podcast for them. And that way, that was, let's see, at the end of the spring semester of last year. So we've got 2 semesters under our belt with the podcast. And I find that being in class with them and hearing their questions informs what I decide to podcast about. Because the purpose of it is to prepare teachers for the realities of the classroom and to help teachers who are already in the classroom and encountering strange situations. So every topic on there on mine is related in some way to teachers. And also, what I love about it, I have guest speakers. I have, I don't let them just go on and on, but that's an option. If you have many of you, oh my goodness, people from all over the world who can contribute so much. And perhaps they are maybe retired and not able to get in the car and drive to your classroom, or maybe they live somewhere in another country or something. But the important thing is, with podcasting, you can still have them as your guest. And you can just have your students in beforehand tell you the questions that they would like to ask. And then you can ask those questions of the person and get your answers. Or you can record the podcast with the person there and, in your classroom. And that way your students can ask the questions right there on the, while they're being recorded. But you might want to get their consent before you do that. It's really very, very useful tool. And with Anchor, as with Podbean, Breaker, Buzzsprout, there's a bunch of them, but with these, once you create your quote unquote show, it can become available on multiple platforms. So yeah, so let's say, again, Anchor is what I use. I created my podcast on Anchor, right? But now it is available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Breaker. I didn't get Libsyn yet. They're so aristocratic. Stitcher, I'm on Stitcher. So they just automatically cascade. Oh, I'm on Google Podcasts. Overcast, I'm on. They cascade your show to other platforms. So to help you with a wider audience. And if you made up your mind that you want a public podcast, then it just makes sense. It just makes sense. And, my first couple of episodes, I just took my notes that I've been teaching from. And now I'm being I hope a bit more timely, because people really need ideas for making the online experience helpful. I really want to take questions. I'm not finished, but I really want to take questions. And I can't hear anything. Okay. Yeah, iHeartRadio also. You can listen to the podcast for free. I think it is a subscription program, but I think you can still listen for free to the podcasts. Yes. Those are some of the platforms. All right. Easy to sign up. I hear from people, oh, I can't do that because I'm not tech savvy. You don't have to be. Trust me, you don't have to be. What you need to do is create an account for yourself. I already have one, so that's why it says log in. But you can, where it says sign up, you just click that, put in the name that you want to use, because you don't have to use your real name either. And it asks you what kind of topic you think you're going to want to cover. What is the purpose of your podcast? And in a few words, describe who you want to reach and why you want to reach them. Now, with your academic podcast that you're using through your university, you won't have to do any of that because it'll be through the class. So it's easier to set up that way because you've got the curriculum, you've got the course of study, which explains why you're saying what you're saying and uploading what you're uploading. Oh, by the way, through your university, if you create the podcast through your university, it's open to your colleagues too. So, I mean, if you don't mind that, I don't mind that, but if you do mind that, then perhaps not. And of course, Facebook and Google always want to get involved in everything. As you can see at the bottom of the slide there, they want you to use their interface. And I suppose it's okay, but I choose not to do that because I feebly try to guard my privacy. That's my podcast homepage. They create a podcast homepage for you. This is you get a URL. You get the URL, and you can either let them create your logo, or you can create your own. I happen to enjoy doodling and drawing and painting, so I that's my artwork. But they make very nice ones if you're not so inclined to create your own. And just a brief message about what my goals were for the podcast. And I added a few months ago, I added the option of people leaving a message on the podcast so that, and it's actually a voice message. So even if you're listening on the computer, when you click that, it's going to ask you to start talking. And please do. And you can see there, and you can listen on Spotify. Support. Okay, so this is another reason why you want to keep your university-based stuff separate from your personal. I have people who support my podcast. All you have to do is make the button available. People have clicked. I think when I made this screenshot, someone must have donated because I've got a little thing there. But people, it's amazing. It's not much money, but you get something. It's nice to be rewarded for your time, and it's enough to buy a cup of coffee for your guest speaker. And then, of course, the message is there. You can click there and start talking. At the bottom of the slide, you can see 7 of the platforms that this podcast is available on, and the 8th one would be anchor.fm. And the trailer, the little arrow to your, I guess would be to your left, where it says play trailer, if you click that, because this is a screenshot, you'll hear this. Or at least I hope you will.
Hi, I'm Cynthia Northington Purdie, and welcome to Starting Your Teaching Career. This podcast covers everything you need to know about the teaching profession. how to prepare your resume, what to put in your portfolio, how to manage the class, how to manage behaviors that are outside of the norm. Lots and lots of helpful information. And now, how to teach online. So tune in. You don't have to start with the first episode, just jump right in and send us a message and subscribe, share with a friend. Welcome.
Okay. Sorry. What I also like about this is that you have, once you have your content the way you want it, you have the option of adding music behind you. As you heard, you just choose which music they have. They have royalty-free music that you can use, and also sound effects, which I kind of like, because in between points, because sometimes what I do is I record segments in like 5 to 7 minute drops. And so what I do, I record what I want to say. They actually have sound effects to wake up, like one that like boing, or they have a whole menu full of them. And so that, it kind of reminds me of if you're in the classroom, you're standing there at the podium and you look out onto the audience and people are kind of glazed over and you, hey, everybody, or whatever, you're trying to get everybody's attention. That's what this thing does. And you can just insert them throughout your episode, in between the segments or wherever you want them. And so between the music behind you and just the kind of the breaking sounds, the noisemakers, it does a nice job of holding your attention. If, say, I have many colleagues who are brilliant in their field, but they're not the most captivating speaker. So this kind of livens up the sound for you. It livens up your speech, for which I'm grateful. This is some of the episodes that I created over the year. The first one is in the top left on the bottom, the one that says a warm hello. That was the introduction. That was my first time recording, and we went from there. Why do you want to be a teacher? And that's a 2.5 hour lecture that I comprised down and melted it down into about 20 minutes. I don't think the episode should be long. I think they need to be short and to the point. Because see, when I started doing this, the whole purpose of it was review of what I said in class, right? So, and if you weren't in class and you listen to the podcast, you're still not going to get everything, but you'll get something. And I think, I don't know, there's something human about that I really like. And then I go into the, preparing your documents, getting everything together that you're going to need to be a teacher. I interviewed a young man who is teaching in Brooklyn, New York, and fascinating experience. And then the basic topics that I would have covered in class: charter schools. What is a charter school in the United States? That's a big deal right now. What to wear, and then the interview questions, which was another 2.5 hours, because I like to role play what question you're going to be asked for your employment, and what your answer says about you, and what you're saying to the group to which you're interviewing by your answer. Motivation vampires, that episode was interesting, because you have to spend a lot of time in teacher education motivating your students, because there's so much out there to make people not want to teach, and that's a shame. I have quite a few people, not a lot, but quite a few people that I've interviewed. If you can, I don't have, oh, wait, okay. Teaching abroad, why not? And why not? And I try to give websites. What they do with each episode is that you give it a name and just a brief explanation of what you're going to cover in that episode. And you can also, you can bookmark websites in the show notes for each episode. So some of these episodes, I actually have websites that I went to in order to get that information. So it's really a great educational tool. Here's a few more I've done. I try to record every week. I try. one student had asked me last year, what's a sabbatical? And I said, oh, we assume that people know things like that, but they don't. So we did an episode about that. We have to take a praxis over here, which is a test without which you won't get certified. EdTPA is a big deal over in the United States right now. Thank God you don't have to do that. And here are some more. That's a guy who was a teacher, a special education teacher who retired recently, and he had many things to say about the profession, etc. That was interesting. Classroom management, everybody wants help with that. I'm sure that's not a problem in Japan. Parent conferences, diplomatic ways of talking to people who have had children. And it's interesting because in many cases, the teachers that I'm preparing are only 21, 22 years old, and the parents are coming in and they're like 25 and they're thinking, well, it's going to be okay because we're the same age, and there's no correlation, because being a parent is different from being a student and being a parent, being a teacher. Sorry, I'm talking too fast. Oh, well, I'll go back. Like I said, classroom behavior management, online teaching. I've done 2 episodes on online teaching. I did the second one after creating this presentation because the K-12 teachers are teaching online now. And when I did it, they were telling us, the university was telling us, get ready to teach online. And everybody was scrambling to get their websites and materials together. So in the show notes, I have bookmarked websites and things for everybody. I think this is the future. We're going to be doing this for a while. The state of our world politics is going to mandate that we think outside of the box a lot more. And I think this is a good way to do it. This is one of the good ways. There's so many. If you're interested in this, that's my email there. And my podcast URL is there.